Okay, so I'm looking at the backup. It says default. Oh, something just started moving. You got sound now? Are you connected?
I do not yet have sound. I might be a little delayed. Yep, I have sound.
Okay, we're good. Thanks.
Yep.
Testing?
We're on.
I think so, thanks, George. I think Devin's still talking to you. Thanks, Devin. Okay, all set?
Yep.
Okay, welcome to the July 2nd regular meeting of the Durham Planning Board. And the first thing on our agenda is roll call and determination of quorum. We have a quorum, we have 3 members present, of 5. So the next step is pledge of allegiance. Please rise and join me.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, next, any amendments to the agenda? I don't have any. Seeing none, we'll move on to number 4, acceptance of meeting minutes. So this is the June 4th, 2025 minutes. Any changes, comments? Seeing none, do I have a motion to accept? So moved. Second?
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Seeing none, raise your hand if you approve. It is done. Informational exchange on non-agenda items, town officials, that would be you, Mr. Thavarj.
Just to inform the board, you may be aware already that the select board is going to schedule a meeting like we do every year to do like a strategy session. And they'll be inviting the leadership of each of the boards and commissions, particularly those that are dealing with land use issues like yourselves, to come and meet with the select board, and they're looking for your input on what priorities should be, given the limited resources that we have, both committees and staff, to deal with a lot of issues. So usually this time of year, the select board gets together, we present kind of the stuff that we've been working on and what we see coming down the pike, and then they try to come up with a set of priorities. Can't do everything, so what should we be working on? Obviously, our focus is on the next town meeting, which this next year happens to be in June rather than April, which gives us a few months of breathing room, but to prepare legislation for the town meeting in terms of ordinance amendments or new ordinances. Pretty much this is the time we have to hit the ground running to get research done over the summer, have a public participation process in the fall to vet, get public input on whatever issues are being proposed, and then after the first of the year, everything gets into high gear for meeting all of the requirements to have issues on the town meeting warrant. So that's kind of what, that's on July 22nd. I think it's at their second regular monthly meeting.
It is July 22nd.
Yep, so obviously the board members will be welcome to attend. They're looking to have each leader of the groups kind of speak on behalf of the group.
And that's what I'd like to get to in the second item on the agenda. George will give us an update on how we're doing on the codification stuff, but then is there anything that we want that might not be part of codification or the priorities and stuff? So get that from you to take into the July 22nd meeting, either tonight after discussion, or you can email me and we'll let you know. Generally what we did last year is sat around a table, then went by committee. The gist of it is that, well, I think they will listen. The select board is really gonna decide what gets worked on going forward, so. But I think if there's things that are not part of the codification process now in terms of articles that we think ought to be changed, or things that are, we need to make our prioritize. So we make sure that those in fact become part of the formal codification, new land use ordinance. So we'll hold that discussion until we get there. Okay, so George, anything else?
Nope, that's it.
Residents, public comment, non-residents, since there are none. Okay, continued business, we have none. New business. Wisnowski, Losnecki, would you come to the front? I'll read some stuff and then we'll get started. So new business, a request for conditional use approval for sale of pre-owned vehicles, motorcycles, boats, and power sports at 184 Brickyard Hill Road, Brickyard Hill Road, map 4, lot 153, and public comment will not be taken at this time. So, Mr. Marsh, would you like to give us a quick?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, as I indicated in the agenda notes, which have been posted along with the agenda packet, the applicant is here before you tonight to get a conditional use permit for sales, and he indicated it would be pre-owned vehicles, motorcycles, boats, and power sports. Under Durham's ordinance, zoning regulations, basically people typically have home occupations, and in order to qualify as a home occupation without having to come to the board, you can't have any outside sales or storage. So the idea is that a home occupation, you wouldn't even know it's there, because everything is conducted inside. So conditional use, you apply the criteria of the ordinance for drainage and traffic and noise and scale, all those criteria. It's not clear exactly from the applicant what the level of outside on-site activity would be. You might want to clarify that, but before you even get started, one of the issues that has to be clarified is
I did not yet have sound.
okay for me.
Yeah, I have sound.
Still, I'm sorry. All right, there, I think we're off now.
Okay.
I was distracting myself. Okay. So, one of the critical issues is for anyone to be before you requesting a permit for land use on a property, they have to have what they call right, title, or interest. And that means they're either the owner of the property, or they have an easement, say somebody has a purchase and sale agreement, or they have a license from the property owner to apply before you. And the application that was submitted did not include any indication of right, title, or interest. So before you can even begin to read the application or review it, that's the threshold. If he does not have right, title, or interest, he can't even be before you. So, and then I did provide the applicant with the forms and instructions that the planning board prepared several years ago. And your packet includes his application, the documents that he's submitted as part of that, and also I've prepared a set of draft findings in case you get to that point.
Okay, thank you. And so, Mr. Wozniacki, I'm sorry. So before we can really get into an in-depth discussion, you have to, the concern is you have the right to even be here in terms of doing a conditional use on land that you don't own. And I understand you don't own the parcel.
Correct, yeah.
So we need some kind of written okay from the owner, or one of the things that would like to take a look at, George. Can you put it up on the board? Is it?
No.
Okay.
In looking at the aerial photos, it looks like the building is on two separate lots,
Yeah,
and the garage is on the lot that is the
no, so
owner.
the building, yeah, so the building split. I own, or I rent and take care of a six bedroom part of the building, and then the others.
On a separate lot.
Correct, yeah, it's a separate lot, the garage and the house are on separate lot, yeah.
Okay, so,
There was an email sent by landlord too,
We have not received any documentation.
Oh,
so, yeah, so we'll need, the issue is, in my mind is, if you look at, there is, on the packet that George put together, there is a
Air photo.
an exhibit that shows that the split, And it's a little hard to tell what is on, one property and not the other. So it looks like the majority of the house is not. But the point is the house is split. My concern when we get into this is we can get, if we get in there, we're not gonna have too much discussion tonight.
Right,
But you're gonna have to, if you're gonna go into the second property,
yeah,
then you have to have an okay from both property owners.
yeah, I would not be even getting close to the second row.
Okay, and I would take a look at the fact, I'm not sure, I drove past there very quickly today.
Yeah.
How do you access your site?
Inside my driveway.
And that's on your side of that,
Yeah.
okay,
There's a, I mean, there's two driveways, right? This building was an old hotel at one point in time, I'm assuming, that's what I was told. It was split up into 10 bedrooms, 4 bathrooms, I've got 6 beds, 2 baths on one side, and there's 4 beds, 2 baths on the other, maybe less than the other. But there is a quite a division between, I've got a privacy fence in the back that clears my property from the neighbor's property.
Okay.
As well as a set of, large bushes, I guess, that surrounds my property, that's pretty clear indication on my, being the owner, I get a regular RT there. There's definitely 2 driveways for sure.
okay, the challenge we have this evening is because we don't have anything.
Yeah.
And would an email be sufficient, George?
Potentially.
I mean, we wanna make sure it's nice and legal, and
Do you
that it's
have a
really
lease?
clear.
Yeah,
Does that lease say anything about this?
no, and I talked to Eric Heamy, you know, and he had no issue with this, and I thought there was an email, so that's why I wouldn't come down tonight had there not been an email, I guess I would have anyways to see what we were doing, but there should have been an email,
Why didn't you include something in your application?
well, because I thought that, going over and reading it, it wasn't too clear to me, and I thought that, you know, just an email to you from him, with his contact information and everything else, whether it's sufficient or not.
Well, I think tonight we're not gonna be able to do it.
Right.
So what I would ask you to do is to ask, the landlord, the landowner,
Mhm.
to, George, you know, jump in if I'm wrong.
It should be written authorization.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think a
Not-
letter is
Not just
better.
an email, which could come from anybody.
And he can PDF that, email the letter to Mr. Delarge,
Okay,
but it has to be more than just the email.
yeah,
And then my concern is that when you're looking at this, nothing can slop over to the other side.
there's no.
Okay, so what we're gonna look at is if it's approved, it'll be for, just the property you're now renting. Or you have to get another landlord to say, they can use my drive or whatever it may be, does that make sense?
Yeah, of course, I don't think there's any way, shape, or form, so you'll be able to state that, knowing where my mailbox is and my side.
Okay. And then since you now have another month to think through this.
Yep.
Please look at all the requirements that are there, there's some things that are missing on your application.
Okay,
Some of them are minor, like just checking a block whether there's a wetland there or not, but there's some other things that we wanna make sure that, you know, every block is filled out and there's no doubt, cause you don't want us to approve this if we do, and then down the road, somebody say it was a bogus application, should never been approved.
Right.
So, unfortunately, that's where we are this evening.
Okay.
And anybody else have?
so, I just wanna get a list of things as far as, definitely need a written consent, which can be PDF or email to George. And then the next one would be just make sure the application's fine too.
Well, I would go through the application and the ordinance, it would probably really not our job unless you guys wanna take the time to go through all the stuff, or if you have some things that you would like to see included in that.
It's all right in the application and the instructions.
So, I'm not trying to blow you off, but
No, for sure.
yeah, we're not in a position really to do that. I would say any information you can give, things like how many cars you expect to be there. You talk about people coming on site rarely, but they do come on site to buy,
Yeah.
and so on and so forth. So the more explanation you can give
Okay,
in writing or be prepared really good, engineering survey with everything laid out on it, if you've got such a thing, or the landowner has a survey of his property where he can put it on there to somewhat to scale.
Yeah.
Because you will be faced, I think, with setback, George, setbacks would apply for the, it's a little hard since half the house is already in, you know, 2 properties, but I'm not sure how.
As long as there's no construction that's gonna be taking place,
Okay.
then that's probably not an issue.
Should not plan to build anything,
No.
okay.
I guess it's just a foot into some information on filling the rest of this out, kinda getting this formally done.
Yes,
At
I
least
think
I'll leave here knowing.
if you
what
have a
needs to be
blank
done.
spot, and if you really don't know, I don't mean to insult you, what one is or where to find it, you can check with Mr. Clark, say where do I go to find the what, it's on the website, the GIS system.
Okay.
So, yeah, we will see you next month, and,
Mr. Chairman.
Yeah.
So this is a conditional use permit?
Yes.
Correct. And if it did include new construction, we'd go into a site plan review?
yes,
Is that right? So, which is a whole different ballgame?
Yeah.
So your application states that you will, have either, you check yes
Oh,
in the
did I?
box where it says there will be either a new structure, an expansion, or construction, or expansion of parking areas. So if you're not planning to do any of that, I would check no,
Okay.
because yes indicates, or it could put you into a whole different
Yeah,
application.
there's not gonna be any of that, so.
and just need to explain to us why you show an area where you're gonna park for sale vehicles. So that is a parking area in my mind, is it, so explain to us that it does or does not exist. If it doesn't exist, you're gonna build a whole parking area, then Mr. Lenoir's comment about
Yeah.
that you will have to go through the site plan review.
Yeah, there's not gonna be any changes to the property.
Okay.
It's-
But we're gonna wanna know where you showed a very rough sketch, in my mind, cleaned it up a little bit,
Okay.
and how many,
Yeah,
so that we don't
that's-
find a whole bunch of cars now brought forward. You know, the whole yard can't be full of cars, it was what I'm saying, or tell us that's what you wanna do, and we'll decide if that's a good idea or not.
Yeah, no, this was a couple of vehicles at a time that were gonna be kinda stored there until they were sold, it's only, you know, couple in, couple out, once they sell, new ones come in, and then go from there, I guess.
And the signs, George, the signs would be handled by the building, the codes guy, right? So you might wanna touch base with him before you put a lot of money in a sign, if you get approved, but is he okay, he's our signs approver.
Okay.
If you will. So, I guess that's what I say, is take a look at it, try filling in the blanks, clean up your sketch a little bit.
Yeah.
If that gentleman has a survey that from when he bought it or way back, if he can give you a copy that you can put some stuff to scale, or give us a real clean picture of what you wanna do there.
Okay.
The cleaner the better, the more information we have, the easier it will be to make a decision.
Okay.
Howard, do you have
This
any?
was pretty, actually, this was good insight, cause this was whether I was gonna buy the piece of property and put, you know, the shop on that I'm doing, the plan was, or just to stick where I am, can I do conditional use, I've got a shop now, I've got a business out there and.
Someplace else.
Correct, yeah, so this is, I've done it honestly for 7 years now. But doing the conditional use at home would be, it would just open a little more kind of opportunity at the house and be able to, you know, legally structure this instead of just throw vehicles in and out and you know.
Well, we don't like illegally structuring, so that's a good idea.
Right, that's what I mean, you know what I mean, so it was more so just kind of figuring out what the first step was with this at home versus varying, so. Down where I am now, kind of expanding a little bit, so that's kind of where I'm at, but yeah. Otherwise.
Well, I appreciate you considering Durham, and we can certainly, but just give us as much information as we can.
Yeah,
And that's for your own good too, so that down the road, if somebody starts complaining, you can say, hey, look at this is what was approved, and I'm living within the approvals.
right,
Or if not, the code guy can say you're not living within the approvals.
Right.
Now, anything else?
Well, it's interesting, 'cause, I mean, I know the area very well. It's interesting, as you continue on Brickyard Hill, probably another eighth of a mile past this residences where they actually had a junkyard at one time. And the
Is that what
junkyard,
that fence is?
well, there's
Okay,
there's
so
a,
just as you
there's a cell
chain link.
tower.
Just as you approach the dirt road where the cell tower is, where Mike Pop was building a couple of houses there was directly where the two new houses that are built is right on top of the junkyard that was there, you're right.
Exactly, exactly.
Okay.
Which is kind of funny in my eyes.
And I was under the understanding, I
Built houses.
don't specifically know that the property line was down the middle of the residence.
Yeah.
There is,
Right.
At one point in time, that building was split down two now, yes. It was-
So is this currently owned by one individual?
Correct, yeah.
Okay.
So my half is owned by one, which is weird, right? It sounds weird, not weird for me being there. You know, we got 3,200 square feet on our side and another 2,200 on the other side, but it was right down the middle,
Mhm.
so.
yeah, it
It's
looks
almost,
slightly,
it's almost like a massive duplex if you think about it.
yeah, it looks slightly, not quite the middle, but the intended,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah,
But there's two, yeah, there's absolutely two property lines, but it's two different owners, as you're looking at the
correct,
picture.
yeah,
Your landlord owns
Right.
one
one,
side and then.
on one side, then there's I think it's a woman's name that owns
Yeah,
this.
yeah. Yeah, so it goes.
There
But
are
it's,
two,
but it's the same landlord?
No,
No?
no, two separate owners,
Oh, very interesting.
yeah.
that's that's where my
That's where
concern,
we get to, it's a fine line.
it is a very fine line.
Yeah, I was supposed to purchase that whole area
Wow.
and then got into knocking down the half and then building my own shopping house on that property. But then it was, how much of a hassle would it be to split that up and knock down half without taking down the structure that it's attached to, you know what I mean? So
This is a very
it was,
unique situation.
It is very, so whatever you bring back into us, show very clearly that you're only on the one side and that is authorized, or if you have to go on both sides, that you have a letter from both owners, or each different owner.
yeah, I wouldn't have to worry about.
Okay, just make it real clear.
So, I can get some other area and aerial photos, I guess, so that everything's completely mapped out and shows you guys a very clear picture of where entrances are.
And we would want dimensions to go with all of that.
Okay.
Yeah, how far you are,
There's also the issue of notification of the butters, I don't know if that's happened.
What is it?
Yeah.
Notification of the butters, that was also.
Did you send certified letters to all the neighbors,
Or get their signatures.
or get their signatures on,
It's still coming in, there's,
okay, we gotta get it,
Yeah.
okay, it's gonna be next meeting, you gotta have it done,
yeah, like I said, this was
okay.
way more than, I had a couple of guys that they have own dealerships and dealerships that we all work with, and we all kind of were looking at this oddly, because nobody kind of knew, I didn't even know what was going on with the application, to be honest with you, a lot of this was very it was very confusing, misconstrued.
Provide us as much information as you can, and recognize, I mean, all we've got is what you provide us.
Right, yeah.
So if you want us to approve it. My other concern is, and you will need, I think you need to get with the road commissioner,
Mhm.
about, line of sight. I think I don't know what the speed limit is there, but you gotta make sure you've got the right, line of sight, what I'm referring to.
No.
Oh, okay,
Well, you would think that would already be established based on that driveway being there.
didn't look like 300 feet, is my only concern. I mean, it may be, my eyes are not that calibrated. But it looked to me like if it was at one time, it would, just ask him what it's gonna be and then, show us that you have the required line of sight distance.
Okay.
And he can point out to you what it is, cause it's based on the speed limit there, and I know as Alan said, right in front of you is pavement. But please make sure you've got that, and that's a big deal. They'll talk to you about the entrance and probably even though you're not gonna have a lot of traffic, it's not gonna be just a driveway, it's gonna be for public use, for commercial use.
Right. Okay.
Anything else?
I think one thing I don't know whether you're going to be doing any mechanical work.
No.
Okay.
No,
The only reason I ask that is because the Androscoggin River is right there, and if there was any leakage of whether it be antifreeze or whatever, that would be would have to have a containment area.
Yeah,
That's, okay.
the property is gonna be used as an annex, pretty much, for a storing facility, 2 to 3 vehicles that are being sold. My home office will be there as it is now, kind of. And then, once the vehicle's sold, it's moved from the property, and then, what's moved in. So it's pretty clean cut and dry as far as my idea coming from my head, but I'll put that into very detail.
Right.
Right.
That would be good for both of us,
Okay.
right?
I'm good.
Okay, so we will, get it all together, whatever the next deadline is, for the next meeting, and we will see you then.
Okay.
Fair enough?
Or the meeting after,
Good, what's that?
or the meeting after.
Or the meeting after, if you don't have enough, well, one of the things we'll have to, this may not be a one meeting shot.
Well, I came here to see if this was generally worth
Okay.
doing what it was, 'cause I'd never been to one of these. And I'd always been told, I get a couple of buddies in other towns that were like, hey, you go in, you spend 5 minutes, tell us what to do, and you're pretty much gold. I said, I don't know about that, So that's why.
Just tell them they were wrong.
There was some,
They got their licenses with, so that's why I was
It
like, I
depends
don't
on,
know how that works.
every
in
every town is
different
different.
areas. That's why I told them, I'm just gonna, pay the fee, do the application, come in at least and rough it with you guys. And then I got 32 years old, all the time work, so as far as it goes now, I leave with the information I know I need, so I
Okay,
guess that's.
good. We'll get to work.
Perfect.
Good, we'll see, and again, what I had started to say was, we need to consider whether we wanna have a public hearing on this when it comes back in, if we think it's a big enough issue.
Yeah,
If you have a choice.
I understand, this isn't.
I would think that if you're notifying neighbors of your intentions, I would hope that any discussion you have with them, they would alert you of any concerns they may have.
Yeah, I've been buying selling stuff off.
Agreed, I think that's kind of the point of refining.
Okay. Well, so make sure that they, your letter or whatever to them, if they have any question, it helps if it's all resolved before it gets here, so that it doesn't become testy or whatever, so tell them they're welcome to reach out to Mr. Thabarge if there's a particular question, or even better, if you can answer all their questions. Tell them what you're gonna do, tell them that you're putting it on the application in writing, and
In my case, there's only 2 neighbors I have to worry about, which would be across the road next to me. I've been doing this for years.
Okay.
On the small stuff, so I don't think they're gonna have an issue, shouldn't be an issue.
okay. Good, anything else? So get us everything, it goes smoother, if we don't have to ask for more stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Good, thanks, Ed.
Okay, so, I guess next month for that one. And then, the next part of it is, the meeting is discussion about, George has provided, they've done a bunch of good work on, what I call the minor, we using the term minor article, George? Minor changes? There's the technical changes, and then, are these the minor changes, or are these?
These are minor policy issues.
Some minor policy issues, MPIs. So George has taken about 6 of them and already kind of written up, if you remember, there were 14 of them. And George, if you just wanna give us a quick update on kind of where you are on that before I meander off.
We can do that. So, for members of the public, the town has a contract with General Code, which is a consultant that does digitize land use ordinances and other municipal codes. And they've created a template that we can use.
Can we just, Brian, if you want, you're welcome to sit up here.
Sure.
We're not gonna vote on anything, if you just wanna.
So they've created a digital template, which will go on the website, and it enables the town to do a lot of things that we can't do with our manual system right now in terms of updates and indexing, cross-referencing, and just a much more systematized process for keeping your land use ordinance up to date and apparent and accurate, so. They have provided us, after reviewing, doing what they call an editorial and legal analysis of the land use ordinance, They've identified 139 different issues that they need our direction on. Most of them are technical questions and issues, like you want to use select men, select board, those types of very relatively minor, even technical points, but there are 139 of them. Now, there are also some policy issues that are being driven by legal requirements. You may recall LD 2003, the affordable housing legislation that they passed a few years ago required us to change our density. State similarly has mobile home park rules that the town currently is not in compliance with. And you don't have any say over those policies. The state has mandated that you cannot require mobile home parks. Durham currently requires 1 acre for each mobile home in a mobile home park. That's against state law, you cannot do that restriction. So, working with their attorney, the town attorney will be presenting a draft that to them, as part of the 139, it basically just takes the state law and puts that into effect, because that's what we have to do. So there's 139, I met with the select board last month, and actually it was in May, the end of May, and presented a plan for getting this codification work done. And the select board endorsed our proposal, staff proposal, to basically let staff, which is a team managed by myself, involves a code officer, town attorney, fire chief, and public works director, to pretty much go through and address those technical issues. And what we also did was identify, beyond those technical and legal issues, the town can, if it chooses, submit additional policy changes, ordinance changes, beyond their technical review. And we've already discussed that, and I presented a list of 14 relatively minor policy issues. And the reason that I say that they're minor, because they're basically, these are the policies that the town has right now, already in effect. The problem with them is, and I'll give you some examples as we get into the details, is basically the ordinances are way out of date, and they're very poorly written, and in many cases, very confusing. So it's almost impossible to get consistent enforcement, administration, and application of the ordinance. And if you have new code officers come in, this has happened where the ordinance says one thing and new code officer comes in and doesn't understand it because it's so confusing, and they apply it differently than the prior code officer. So that's the kind of stuff we're hoping to really fix in this overhaul. And we tried over the last 7 years I've been here now. First year I was here, we rewrote the comprehensive plan, went through that whole process. Then I did an overhaul of the ordinance manually, basically, and cleaned it up as much as I could with the limited resources we had at the time. And since then, we've been addressing issues, the housing mandate, battery energy storage systems, solar farms, and that's really all the capacity that we've had to do is deal with 1 or 2 issues of ordinance a year. But this is kind of a big push to try to get almost the whole ordinance taken care of. So many of the 16 things here, particularly the first ones that we're going to talk about tonight, we tried, I think Brian, you were still on the board, we tried to get amendments through on backlots, private ways, and roads. And it just got so caught up in the chains of the town meeting process that it failed 3 times over people taking issue with certain details about it. One of the details was, should a private way, which we're going to be talking about tonight, should it be paved or should it be allowed to be gravel? 5 family members are building a common road. Some people thought it should be paved, some people thought it should be gravel. And it stalemated and torpedoed the whole initiative. Meantime, we still have this confusion where the code officer and the public works director approve the plan, and the planning board approves the maintenance agreement for it. And it's really just very confusing. What is the role of the planning board? What is the role of the public works director and the code officer? And all the parties don't really know what the other ones are doing or what they're supposed to be doing. So this proposal basically splits back lots and private ways, which is what every town I've worked for, the way they handle it. And we can get into some of the explanation of what that is, but the biggest thing it does is it makes it clear, it simplifies it, and helps everybody apply the same rules whenever these projects are developed. So that's just one example of a minor policy issue. We're not changing the policy from what it is now in terms of allowing people to do those types of common non-subdivision developments with a private common road. So that policy's been in effect since 2005. We're not changing that, but we are changing the way that it's done. And it affects policy, so that's why we're presenting it as a minor policy. That's not just a technical change that goes into that other bucket. So the ones that I've identified and presented to you, that continued work that we tried to do earlier, that's why I was able to get it together so quickly. So it would be boundary adjustments, and I can explain that. Right now, the Board of Appeals interprets zoning district boundaries when there's any question. And I've been with them 4 times doing this, and they're very uncomfortable with it. They don't think they should be doing it. It's right in the ordinance, but they don't think it should be done. So all the towns that I've worked with, it was the planning board that interpreted the boundaries of the zoning districts, which you established as part of the comprehensive planning process. And I'm proposing that that be put in under the authority and responsibility of the planning board, and I don't think you'll have any trouble dealing with review of technical submissions on wetlands and floodplains, topography, because that's really where it comes in. You know, a zoning map, the line on it is like, at scale, the line is 100 feet wide. So in terms of defining on the ground where that boundary is, it requires field verification and data. And, you know, the town can't survey every property in town that does a zoning map. And so that is a general depiction that says the zoning boundary is wherever the boundary of the floodplain is, wherever the boundary of the wetlands are, wherever the physical boundaries of those, that's the zoning district boundary. And so they go by the map if it's you know not even close. If they're pushing the boundaries, the code officer will typically require them to get a wetland specialist or an engineer or a surveyor to establish that boundary. And if it's substantially different than what shows on the zoning map, then they come to you to say, here's the data, and you say, yeah, we confirm that. So that's what that one is. Driveways right now, the ordinance is typically very confusing. It says that the access management rules apply to all town roads. What is a town road? Is Route 9 a town road? It's in town, but it's not under the state, it's under the state's jurisdiction. So we've been having a discussion at staff level. Basically, it seems that it should, and historically, the road commissioner has only applied, required people to get driveway permits on town maintained roads. Well, what about new subdivisions? No driveway permits there. Wingate subdivision, there was some real problems because they didn't put in driveway culverts where they should have, and now the drainage is messed up, ponding in the road. So my recommendation has been that it should be all roads except the state routes, because the MDOT is issuing driveway permits on those.
And a driveway is something different, right?
A driveway is something different than,
The access management here.
no, access management, well, it could be a road or a driveway. So for example, you have a commercial development
Okay,
and they have like a Hannaford Drive coming in, that's access management. So it's bigger than a driveway, it is technically a driveway, but it's the same size as a road, so. So any entrance onto the road system is basically covered by the access management provisions. And then if you go through those provisions, there's some really crazy standards. typically, when you bring a driveway onto a road in a hilly area, and I could show you some examples, my neighbor, their driveway is so steep that, and on the opposite side of the road, there's a drop off. So the snowplow operator can't get up enough head of steam to plow up the driveway, and she can't have her driveway cleared all winter.
It's very interesting you bring that up, because the previous applicant would fit that scenario.
Potentially.
Yeah.
And so then public safety having to access these properties. And the other issue is when you have a really steep driveway, either going up a hillside of the road or down, the people in slippery conditions have to either try to stop and not slide out into the roadway, or try to gun up onto the roadway, and then they can't stop and check for oncoming vehicles. So most, excuse me, most ordinances have a requirement that within the road right of way, the grade either going down or going up cannot exceed usually about 3%. This ordinance says you can have a 10% grade within the road right of way. So you can imagine what that creates if somebody actually did that. And I've seen examples in other communities. You don't have a lot of severe topography most of the town, but there are some places where this would be an issue. And so typically what has to happen in a situation like that, people have to snake the driveway up the grade rather than going right straight up the grade, which adds expense. But for safety purposes and access by public safety, you really need to have that standard. So if you look through the draft amendments on driveways, you'll see a number of those types of proposed modifications. The other issue, and this has probably been going on for a long time, is that the standards apply to the entire driveway. The road commissioner only looks within the road right of way. He looks at, are they gonna screw up the drainage on the town road? That's all he looks at. And then the code officer looks at the house that they're building. He doesn't look at the driveway to see if it meets the road base, for a driveway base for supporting a fire truck. He doesn't look at if it has the side clearances or the vertical clearances through the woods to make sure that the fire truck doesn't hit limbs and cause damage to the fire truck and equipment on it. So right now there's this gap where a road commissioner looks at the culvert on the road, code officer looks at the house, and never the two shall meet in terms of what is between them. And this ordinance lays out very specific standards for the entire construction of the driveway. Now, if the town is not going to regulate that, it could choose not to. But if those standards are in the ordinance, someone has to inspect it and enforce it. And historically, that has not happened. So we're assuming that the town is gonna maintain those standards, and this just starts to clarify how that gets done. Okay, so again, it's not a major change in policy, but it is significant.
Which one are you on now, George?
I was just generally discussing, we can go through the details. So let me jump down to, so backlots, there's this confused mess that I just talked about. What this proposal will do is basically give someone the opportunity to create it what is other towns might call a flag lot. So you just put in a 50-foot access strip, you have to have 5 acres in the back, but you can put in a driveway, as long as the fire chief okays it under the draft that we've got. You can just build one house, one driveway, you're good to go. Current ordinance requires them to build a 20-foot road, 20-foot wide road to get back to one house. And it's crazy in terms of the cost of providing a driveway for a single house. The concern that led to that was that they do additional lots in the future. Fire chiefs have said, we want 22 feet, because if they ever, 20 feet, because if they ever extend it, we need to have a passable road. So this separates out the issue of future roads completely and just has a single back lot. Anything other than that, you've got to get a road approved under the private way standards. And then the roads themselves in subdivisions like Deer Creek Crossing down here on Hollow Road that you approved. Basically, the road standards right now are still based on the old growth management ordinance, which the town adopted back in 2005. So right now, the standards are you're either gonna build a public road or you're gonna build a private road. And the town doesn't use that anymore. You don't build, the town has really a policy of non-acceptance of new streets for maintenance. So virtually every subdivision that builds a road, it's a private road, and it's 22 feet with 2-foot shoulders, regardless if there's 100 houses on it. Typically, you get, a dozen, but you could have 150 houses on that road, it's still only gonna be 22 feet wide. So most towns have a classification system based on how many homes are being served. And so this is gonna propose that you have a minor local, which I think is up to 9 homes. And that would be, I think it's 20 feet with 2-foot shoulders. And then a local street would be 22 feet with 2-foot shoulders, 4-foot shoulders, excuse me. And then a sub-collector, which is, you've got, a subdivision that has spurs off it, and you're up to, so 9 homes would be one cut off, and then I think it's 29, we'll get into the details, and anything over that is a sub-collector, which is 24 feet with 4-foot shoulders.
So if you have a subdivision that initially is at a lower requirement, but on phase 2, they go to a larger requirement, would you have to upgrade
Yes.
these? Okay.
Okay, so they're proposing that, we're gonna be running the current standards by, hopefully, if we get approved for the funding of it by the town's engineering consultant, to just look at all of the MDOT specs and everything else that's in here, which these are probably way outdated. It talks about zinc culverts. Nobody uses zinc line culverts anymore. So we're working on that. As a result of numerous projects that we reviewed, and this always comes up as an issue, you have subdivision on a busy state road, a busy town road. Casella, the town's waste hauler, won't pick up, and they line all their carts out on their containers out on the main road,
Does that
which
happen?
is, I think it might have happened at least once. So, what I've drafted out is an amendment for readiness to serve. So if you're in the more built-up communities, you have to get a readiness to serve from the utilities, water, sewer, electric. Here, we're gonna do a readiness to serve for waste hauling. So they'll get a letter from Casella saying, you build a subdivision, we'll go in there and pick them up at the curbside. If they say no, for whatever reason, then it's up to the developer to bring you a plan with specifications in the ordinance for where they're gonna be storing their waste containers inside the subdivision.
So has Casella been approached on this?
On these amendments? No.
Well, Casella has said that they're willing to do inside a subdivision, like they do Bowie Hill, as long as they turn the truck around.
Right.
So as long as there's a hammerhead or something at the end of the,
And that's fine for them to say that, but we've seen in subdivisions where it hasn't happened. So this will say,
Yes.
they've gotta get a letter from Casella
Yeah.
confirming before you approve the subdivision, final approval, that Casella's gonna service it. If they won't, then they've gotta come up with a plan.
Because I think that's one of the stalling points on one subdivision that had come to us, and they haven't come to us again. And that was one of our requirements as a planning board.
Well, this will make it automatic, it won't be if you have.
Right, exactly.
So that's solid waste, and there's just one more of the big generalizations, and that's non-conforming expansions. Right now, there's this absolute absurd system. If you have a home, and your home is, it's 150 years old, and it's 20 feet from the 15 feet from the property line instead of 25, you're a non-conforming use. And if you are going to expand that 200-year-old home, 150-year-old home that's 15 feet from the property line, you have to go either to the planning board as a conditional use and prove that you're not gonna cause drainage problems, traffic problems, that's in scale with the neighborhood, all of those things don't make any sense for home edition. And you're gonna approve 100% of them, because they're not gonna cause those problems. And then but you're limited to 30% expansion. You might have 20 acres of land, you're limited to 30% expansion. And then, if you wanna go beyond that, you go to the Board of Appeals. And to convince the Board of Appeals to allow you to go beyond 30% expansion, you have to show that you're not gonna pollute the groundwater. Well, if they meet the standards of the main plumbing code, they're not gonna pollute. Again, there's no point in this process, in the system. And what happened was, the 30% rule was a very specialized thing done by DEP on lakefronts to preserve the scenic quality, environmental quality, and they had camps built right on lakes. That's where the 30% rule came from. Has no bearing whatsoever for Durham. But whoever copied and pasted this together did not understand how these things work. And so what I've done is drafted an overhaul that follows standard procedures for dealing with such non-conforming situations. So that would be the other minor policy piece of this.
It's always interesting to have a history lesson here too.
I've been doing this for a long time. I've seen the good, the bad, and the ugly.
It isn't just because. Good
Yeah.
idea.
So I don't know if you wanna go through all the details of those seven.
Well, let's just kind of talk about the future steps, I guess. So, George has worked out 6 of the 14, so there's 8 left. Plus the small homes, tiny homes, you gotta work on some changes.
That's part of the 139.
139, so that's all gonna be done. And then, I guess recently the state has made changes to what used to be LD 2003, the affordable housing, they've added some more requirements into that, so that sounds like something we're gonna have to do.
But again, it's a pure legal requirement, you have no options.
No, I agree, but it's gotta be.
We're gonna put it in with the 139, it's already in there.
So when I say we, I'm really saying George, but, which he's the long pole in the tent when we get done, but, so there's 8 more MPIs, minor policy, whatever the I stood for, issue. And then I'll have all that together by right after Labor Day?
Yep.
So probably our first meeting in September, give or take. And then the planning board has to kind of go through them, get the word out to the public with public information, discuss it amongst ourselves, get the word out to the public information meetings, take that input, finalize the 14, 16, 12 minor policy issues, send them to the select board. They will then vote to send them back to us as, we would like you to do a public hearing on these. And also the entire codification ordinance, oh, by the way, so not just the changes. And we'll have public hearings I would guess after the first of the year with a warrant ready product by, I would assume, the end of April. Because second week of June is the town meeting, figure a month before that, they're going to printers, so late May, early June, we've got to have the public hearings. And again, public hearings can make no changes. I mean, it's basically, we're just telling people what the select board approved. So there's not a lot that comes out after that. Does that sound like the plan?
Yeah, and you could do multiple public hearings, you can take earlier public hearing and input it, but we're doing that not with formal public hearings, we're doing it with information.
Public information. Yeah, I think we'd have to do that. I think that, well, to some of us, they may be minor public things, but to others, there's kind of a group that's very interested in private roads. And, that was at one town meeting, that was quite controversial. So I would suspect they would wanna have some input on a public meeting, getting that word out. And I don't think we can do all of codification, 139 changes, even if we just say these are all the commas. these are all the capital letters, these are all the select board. There's still gonna be some that, you know, we're gonna have to, talk about a little bit with the town and amongst ourselves. And then these 14, and then the last thing is there anything else that we want to present, to the select board on the end of July? We talked about, and again, we've got when I say we / George has got all the work to do, we talked about, contract zoning for more than just, battery storage. So is that something we feel like we can dump on George and amongst ourselves to get done? Do we wait till this time next year to work on expanding contract zoning? Or there may be something else, I mean, I just pulled contract zoning out, is something we've talked about, so your thoughts on, I guess, this list, and if questions you got for George, and then anything else we might wanna add, so just anything that George presented, we wanna ask questions about, and we get another shot at it after Labor Day.
Correct.
Well, at this point, I would think that we clean up this codification before we start adding new things. Personally,
It's gonna,
I'd like to see it clean.
that, you in agreement, or there's something you
I
want?
mean, we've hired these people to
Yeah, well, we definitely gotta,
clean it up, so yeah, I mean, we need them to fulfill their contract and get that.
but we're not interested, are we interested in adding something to it?
No, George, what are there, 14?
Yeah, and again, what I've tapped into is what you guys have talked about.
And,
Yeah.
and I'm
The
fine
contract zoning thing, yeah, I think that's totally another discussion to be had.
just
I
tell
know
you
that
next year.
we wanna add it onto our list now, and that's gonna require, in my opinion, other, boards involvement.
Yes, an attorney, and so I think that's another, although we've broken the ice on it, so, but is there any, I mean, I'm fine, and I think we should stick with the 14. It would, you know, what George has done so far, plus the 14, I think, I am always, as you know, the negative one, so I think some of these will take more effort, more discussion, and
That's not true.
it's simply, it's not true that I'm negative, or do you think it's not true that
Is this where I should say sweet?
it's sweet? So I think that's kind of the plan. Is there anything on these 6 that George's were, I mean, I do have a question about, I'm trying to straighten out in my mind, George, the difference between the driveway, which serves my house and maybe one more, basically the way I read this is if it's 2 or more, then you've got it serves 2 or more lots, you've gotta have, meet the higher standards. And I guess, so the question is, what are the driveway standards? If I wanna throw another house
Yeah.
for one of my kids in the back of my property,
I don't know if there's a marker over here, I can kind of illustrate it.
The big pushback you're gonna have on that is when it's family members that are.
well, exactly, I mean, I'm not planning to.
No, I'm not either, but I know a lot of the argument in the past has been, well, I wanna give this, I have a chunk of land up here, I wanna give to my daughter or
Yeah,
my
I just-
son. And they're telling me I gotta go through this big expense.
Well, that's been the pushback on the whole, private way, whatever, because we ran into that project that was starting to go in at Millbrook there, where they pulled because we made them, or I at least made them, they told them they have to asphalt it. And that was a killer for them.
Well, it was, but if we didn't go that way, we would be having 2 different standards.
No, I agree, I mean, we had it, but I mean, that was,
I think it was totally justified.
I haven't lost a bit of sleep over it, but I did feel sorry for them because I got what they were trying to do. I mean, I don't mean to be too flippant.
He had already put in a bunch of money for engineering, that's for sure, but hey.
And to you, if, just for your information, George, I talked a little bit about future, while he's writing things down, future projects. It looks like, and George, correct me if I'm wrong, Ruby whatever it is, farm, is gonna do 1 lot on the remaining land,
The one that they wanted.
the 4 lots on. So they're just gonna put one, at this point, they're just gonna put 1 lot on it,
So I'm interesting.
yes,
Okay, so basically you've got,
that's what George.
you got driveways, private ways, and full subdivisions. Okay, so driveways typically serve a single lot, single family or a duplex. Basically, that's just a standard driveway. 12 feet wide, just driveway. Private ways, okay, so then the two extremes are Hollow Road, Deer Creek Crossing. They put a road across the stream, there's 13 houses in there, house lots, paved road, fire pond, the full 9 yards. They have to go through environmental permitting, they have to go through stormwater management, they have to go through all of the process for this, for a subdivision, under main law and local ordinance. Okay, if you create 5 lots, so this is, you could have a 5-lot subdivision where a developer makes 5 lots, builds a road, sells all the lots. If you have 10 acres of land yourself, and you give 2 lots to 2 of your kids, you build one for yourself, and you sell 2 lots to just anybody in the public to raise money to pay for your house lot, for family lots, you don't have to go to the planning board as a subdivision. So most towns, to cover that gap, do what they call private ways. And this is everything to do with the subdivision is reviewed. Solid waste containers, okay? Typically the private way, the only thing you look at is the road itself and making sure it is properly designed, properly built, and properly maintained. Because you don't want 5 lots in there and they all start squabbling over, well, I shouldn't have to pay because you're on the end. And nobody agrees who's gonna pay for plowing it and maintaining it, and the thing ends up like Pound Road, just barely passable. And this has been all over the state. This has been long history. So over the last 40 years that I've been doing this, most towns have what they call a private way standard, where you have to go to the planning board, you put in a right of way just like this one. You have an engineer design the road, just like this one, and then you have a maintenance agreement. And that's all you require. You don't have to get all the state approvals, you don't have to go through all that expense of doing a full subdivision. And what this does is it enables people to do limited development on their properties beyond just a single lot. And it's kind of an incentive to not put their land into the hands of developers. Because if you're gonna spend $150,000, $200,000 to get this approved for family lots, you can't afford it, and so you sell the land to developers. So most towns do this to cover exempt subdivision lots. So driveway now, access management, that thing we were talking about with the road commissioner having to get a permit, all 3.
For the road cut, for the tie-ins.
The road cut
to the-
into the existing
big road.
roads, all 3 have to have an access management permit.
So what's the difference between a private way and a subdivision?
Mainly, the number of lots that are, and the regulatory process you have to go
I
through.
don't understand, but the decision by us, colleagues and whoever to say, that's a private way, that's a subdivision.
Do they trigger subdivision? If they trigger subdivision by creating 3 lots in a single 5-year period, they're there. If they're exempt, they're there.
Exempt by how, not having that,
By giving 2 lots to your kids, you do 1 lot, and you sell 1 to raise money to pay for the road.
but two
You can't create 3 non-exempt lots in a single 5-year period.
So what, on the private way, say you subdivided 2 for your kids.
Yep.
5 years has gone by,
Yes,
and you wanna sell on that access road.
yeah. So that's
So what-
another part of the agreement, the maintenance agreement that is, and the plan itself that you approve says, any further lots on this have to come back to the planning board, and they have to join the maintenance agreement.
Because I was thinking about after 5 years pass and you wanna sell another lot,
You
another
can,
2 lots.
and not get
You
into
can,
this.
you can still do it, but the 2 people that buy those lots are gonna want that road maintained.
Everybody
you have-
should want it.
Right, yeah, right.
well, and they
Well,
go ahead, Alan.
unless you have the kids and the original owner says, I don't care about it, I don't care if there ruts in it, but the people that you're selling it to.
Some people like the ruts.
It slows them down.
It's traffic calming.
Well, when we made
Fire trucks that cost, several $100,000
Yeah.
don't like ruts.
No,
the, there was a husband and wife came in a couple, 2 years ago maybe, before I was the chair, so whatever it was. And they went through multiple iterations. I think they were doing it private way, right? Or
Yes,
they were not doing a subdivision.
but it was treated as multiple back lots, which is this confusion.
In private, because they did do a maintenance agreement. We made them
Yeah,
do a maintenance agreement. They didn't, and they went along and were very nice about it. But that was, we being the planning board, made them go through that process.
Yeah.
Yeah, because they had some concerns.
and again, this is in the ordinance right now. We're not adding something new. It's just what's in the ordinance doesn't work and it doesn't make any sense.
How far on the private way do we go? Because one of the kicker's concerns has always been paving.
Yeah, so currently, this, whatever iteration you have now, does not require pavement. This does, if it's
Okay.
more than 3 lots, this does not require paving. And we're not proposing to change that policy.
You would not require it, it does not require pavement.
what would happen if on the private way that you had 3 original lots and you
Yeah.
added 2 more, would that
This
doesn't necessarily
specifically says,
require?
never has to be paved,
Okay, just to would have a
which is
maintenance
the
agreement.
current policy.
Okay, good, that was one of my concerns.
Well, that's been some of the drawback on anybody that wants to do that, is because of the expense of it. Right, okay.
That's what killed that Ferry Ridge subdivision on Millbrook Road, remember? The family wanted to come and do it?
Yes,
And they said they had to pave the road, that was the end of their project.
Why? Why didn't we just say that was a private, what triggered the subdivision?
They asked for a waiver.
right.
Well, because it was an LLC, it wasn't,
A family, it wasn't personal.
it was commercial, yeah.
Okay.
It was an LLC, so they couldn't claim any family exemptions.
So the private way has to be a family.
Generally, there are some other exemptions, but generally it's named blood relative.
Well, this is one of the things I think that's gonna take some selling or educating people on,
Yeah.
is, it's not,
It's the current policies, we're just fixing them.
I got you.
Because they're so confusing and inconsistent.
No, I like it, George, and I'm just saying, it is gonna take
Yeah.
some education
Education.
to say, look, we're not requiring, on a private way, we're not requiring, you asphalt the whole thing or whatever it may be. So let me go back to something less than the private way. I'm not trying to confuse this. And I'm not planning to do this, but my property, I could easily put one more lot if one of my kids wanted to move back to town. And my daughter watches this, so I'm not gonna say anything, like, I wouldn't let her anyway, but
Do you wanna go off the record?
she has no.
Do you want a motion on that?
Yeah, but going back to, what if there was just one lot back there? Somebody did want their kid,
If you have the frontage on the main road, then you could just develop it without just create the 300-foot frontage if you had excess frontage. Okay, so that's one option.
say driveway, you could have one driveway not paved.
Well,
I guess what I'm asking you
okay,
is
so this is, say, your lot, how many acres?
20,
20 acres. Okay, how much road frontage you got?
I don't know, but it's over 300. I think
Well, let's
Richard's-
just say, it's 700 feet, okay? So you can carve off, you got 300 and 400. So you could do this, 400, this says 300.
Would you have to have 2 driveways?
That's my question. One driveway?
You could do a driveway easement, but generally each one would have their own driveway.
Yeah.
Okay?
Just because you're doing
Now,
frontage.
if you wanted to have the lot back here, or you didn't have enough frontage, you have to have at least 350 feet, then you could put in a private way to create the frontage, if you don't have them. 700.
Yeah, I'm just trying to, I think that could.
So this is a private way. that goes there.
which has stricter, maybe not asphalt, but it has the stone buildup and all that, it's strict.
Right of way, proper base, drainage, maintenance agreement. And any further lots that get split have to play with the game.
Yeah, I think that may be a concern for a lot of people, is that, hey, I don't wanna build, cause somebody came to me when we were talking about affordable housing and said, I wanna put another house on the lot for my kid, but I don't wanna build another road, I wanna just feed off my existing driveway.
One lot, you can do a flag lot, just 16-foot driveway for that person.
So you had, okay, couldn't use the existing road, the existing drive, but, okay. Well,
They just fill out the application. So under that scenario, if you have 700 foot of frontage, and the front's all wet.
Yep.
But I have an existing driveway, and I wanna put my lot out in the middle there.
Then you do this private way.
So, and then the frontage on the new lot is off of the private way.
Yep.
And you need 300 feet off the private way.
Mhm.
Alright. It's not off the
Flag
frontage,
lot,
it's off the private
all
way.
you need is the 50 feet for a flag lot.
and that's doable now.
Yeah.
Didn't somebody come in,
It was on, Brickyard Hill, I think,
there was something, yes,
they wanted to do it, yeah,
and I was thinking even something more recent than that.
they did something else.
Yeah, I don't think they ever did anything up Brickyard, that was a long time, was before you started working with us regularly.
Just started.
Yeah, somebody came in and wanted to, they had 5 acres that came off Brickyard and also came off of Chase Hill,
Murray something,
yeah, Chase Hill Way.
Chase Hill, yeah. So really what they should have been looking at was this, but what they were doing, I think was triggering that.
Yeah, because they got hung up on the requirement for 300 feet of road frontage.
Right.
And that question has come up, so,
So this would have solved that.
but that only works for, I guess, private sales or family sales or whatever the exemption.
Any exempt lots,
Okay,
any exempt
I think
lots.
it doesn't, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything, any other comments, guys?
Why are you taking out the sidewalks?
Is there any sidewalks in this town?
But should we be, my question, should we be prepared? If
Well,
somebody-
the thing is, if you start getting that kind of development, you can add standards.
Change these
but
standards.
There's standards in there for something you don't have. It's like, one of the things we're gonna be doing is you don't have any streets in town. Everything is a road, a lane, and the ordinance uses the terms interchangeably, and it's confusing.
So we would never let anybody approve a street as a name, Talbot Street or,
Well, the ordinance, there's no streets in this town right now.
Okay.
And the ordinance talks about streets and roads, and this will, what it'll do is it'll adopt the term will be road in the ordinance. And the definition will say includes street.
so I was thinking more of the street sign, so somebody wanted to call it a street on the street sign, they'd have to call it a
The
road.
addressing officer will, probably they could call it something street, but nobody has.
Yeah, it's
This
like
is a rural town,
Yeah.
Johnson. Talbot
Talbot Street Road, okay. Those are my questions, anything else that? Yes, we do not have the chair of the sanitation or the solid waste with us tonight, but that may be one. And have you,
Sorry.
yeah,
The soil erosion control, you're taking that whole section out, but it's gonna be referenced in the
Referencing
appendix,
the soil erosion control section.
which is the appendix.
No, I think there's actually a separate standard. What's the reference there? I'll be right back.
there's multiple appendixes back there. I couldn't remember.
Yeah, I thought appendix 2 was soil.
And Brian, if you have any questions about what is non-conforming or what we do tonight, conditional use, you know, ask one of us or ask George, you know, how are we doing this, what are we doing and stuff like that, so.
I got a decent conceptual understanding of most of these terms. I don't know Durham's land use ordinance by heart or anything, but I understand what's being talked about.
Good.
We're not voting on these, right?
No, this is just George's working on if we've got something we'd like him to consider.
So
If
is he,
This
so,
is drafting these up,
so he must be working on the soil erosion control, cause he took out all 1, 2, and 3.
Yeah, what he just said is, so if you read the, underneath the, see where it says,
he refers you to whatever the.
But he hasn't identified it as.
Yeah.
right, so that XX one, that's what is, wherever that appendix is.
So
Or section of this.
The soil erosion control under section XX, that's something that you're still working on, right, George?
Does that reference the appendix?
It doesn't, it just says XX right now.
Yeah.
But it's nice because you get rid of all that
Right.
verbiage that's there and you don't have to, you know, double
And,
check.
and a lot of times it conflicts with the other one.
Right, yeah, so that avoids all that. The other comment I had was getting rid of, parking requirements for.
Yeah, those are not
commercial.
getting rid of them, we're moving that into site plan review,
Okay,
which is where you usually have that come into play.
okay,
And it's adding specific standards, which the ordinance currently doesn't have.
okay, okay.
Yep.
I just have one other comment here. Bear with me, please.
So while you're looking, as I explained to John, what's really important is when we get into the public participation process, it's really important that you folks understand what this is doing, and even the details. You know, that's part of that education process. If they get this, people get the sense that you don't know what's going on, that doesn't help the public. But in the past, you folks have really taken on solar and gas, and you really understood what the issues were, and even what the language was. You don't have to be a technician, you know, but just being able to explain it from a common sense standpoint is critically important for the appointed and elected officials. I'm here to help you with the technical and presentation, but it's really important that you all understand and feel comfortable with this stuff.
This is not in the non-conforming section.
Yeah, non-conforming?
So there's this, I'm looking at this from from a commercial perspective, right? So there's section C, section 16.4, number C.
Yep.
Expansion of non-conforming, other than residential. So if I'm looking at this from a commercial perspective, after I look at C, I wouldn't go any further, because I'm just looking at it from a commercial, right? Everything else is residential. But then when you get down to abandonment in F.
Yep.
2. F2 talks about non-conforming commercial use and residential use. So would it be better to split that paragraph in two and put the commercial?
Do you think different rules would apply for abandonment? And it does actually, I mean, it does differentiate. For the last sentence says, for any residential use that is non-conforming, the discontinuance period shall be 4 years.
But it's in the,
Yeah,
it's in
you're
the
saying make that a
residential
separate
section.
one?
So, yeah,
Yeah,
I would never look for that
yeah,
if I'm
Okay.
looking at it from a commercial
Yep,
perspective,
you
and
do
it's
that.
buried in the residential section.
right. Oh, and you're saying the abandonment should be in the commercial too?
Yeah.
See,
Or just
abandonment,
split,
abandonment,
I would split the paragraph and take the commercial section of abandonment and put it in with the, it's not considered a commercial, it just says anything but not residential.
But so C, it'd be like C, either C6 or something like that,
Correct.
the first
Yeah,
four
yeah, yeah.
lines, whatever it is.
Pull it out of there, so that all the commercial stuff is,
Yeah, I agree, that's good.
or non-residential stuff is in non-residential paragraph or section. Does that make sense?
Good one.
And here's the other interesting thing about this town, because you allow commercial anywhere in town, that you allow residential, you really don't have non-conforming commercial uses. Everything is allowed as a conditional use. Where you get into that is typically, in most towns, you have a zoning district for commercial, you have a zoning district for industrial, you have a zoning district for residential. So if you have commercial in the residential district, that's non-conforming. If you have residential in the commercial district, that's non-conforming. That's where these things come into play. Because if you've got an old, a welding shop that's been there since the 1950s, and, people have been in and out of there with all kinds of uses, and then if it gets discontinued for a period of, what these periods are, zoning's intent is that eventually non-conforming uses go away. And somebody tears it down and puts a house on it, in a residential district. That's how, but in Durham, everything is mixed. So I can't think of any non-conforming uses in this town, because everything's allowed by conditional use anywhere.
Unless you had a side yard or a front yard or
Yeah, but that's just
The
setbacks.
dimensional-
Dimensional, it's not use. It's just structures. Now, if you had something in the resource protection district, either residential or commercial, then that might be non-conforming, but you will recall, we pulled all of the buildings out of the resource protection in the last round to avoid this.
existing building.
So this is just there in case but this is not gonna be a practical.
I'd move it anyway. If it's okay, just move that.
Oh, yeah. No, I'm just saying this whole section here, what they have there doesn't make any sense whatsoever. Most of this is not really applicable, but it's there if you need it.
As soon as you say that, George, next month, we're gonna have some odd,
Well, your Board of Appeals meets like once a year if they're busy. Because you don't have non-conformities in your town. Falmouth, where I was, every month Board of Appeals had 3. Because people have tiny lots and they're trying to build big houses on them, don't need setbacks. Look at the agendas of some of the other Brunswick and
well, we
Falmouth.
should have taken some of their business away with the, changes to resource protection, and, when we took things out of resource protection and we defined,
Right.
100-foot distance and all that
Yeah.
other stuff, hopefully that would, take away some of that business.
Yeah.
They wouldn't have to keep going.
Keep it simple.
Yeah, anything else? What, do you think you'll have more in August, some more that we could just kind of do what we did is this helpful to you?
Oh,
Brenda?
yeah.
And then,
Well, I'm hoping it brings you up to speed.
Yeah, no, this is fantastic.
Yeah.
Cleans it up great.
Do you anticipate any other applications next month?
Not so far, but who knows?
Well, what was this about? The, 4 lots,
Ruby Farm View is pretty much backed out of doing it. They're applying for building permits for the individual lots there instead of the subdivision expansion.
individual lots where?
Well, there's land retained by the owner that they were proposing to split into 4 lots.
Right,
They've applied for a building permit for that lot, which they can do because it's retained by the owner.
and that becomes part of the subdivision, correct?
Technically, it's not part of the subdivision. Dean Smith did the same thing with Deer Creek Crossing. He reserved part of that whole big tract, and that lot, basically, is
and he accessed it off Deer Creek's drive.
Yep.
If I remember right.
land owned, retained by the developer. And they can come in like, what's the name of the subdivision run by UL? Truman Day. Truman Day, you're in there.
Yeah, I am in there.
Yeah, so off the end, there's a large piece of land that someday could be coming for extension.
It's a vote there.
Land
It's on
retained.
the other side of the brook.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
a
big,
big
a lot of
expense.
conversation about that on the lane and that, how that road is gonna. be
Well, when
built.
the lot prices hit, exceed 200,000, like in Falmouth, go across the brook.
Oh, because it can pay for it.
They're getting there. I mean, some of the land I've seen for sale has been $70,000, $80,000 an acre. You know, 160 for 2 acres. So it's getting up there.
We got one of Chickadee's sold for over 200,000.
House or lot?
That's town road, but.
So, to that subdivision, and to the point of that subdivision, with the road classifications that you're putting in place here, if that road, if the expansion goes to a different classification, would the existing road need to be expanded?
Yes.
Okay.
Potentially, depending how,
It's not grandfathered.
how much they put in.
As long as it didn't exceed 26 or 29 years.
Which would affect every driveway.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
How so?
There's 8 driveways in that road.
Oh, they
Why
have
is it-
expanded, yeah.
We would.
But typically it'd go 2 feet, 1 foot on each side, which is not gonna rock the world,
But still an added cost.
potentially.
And we think Bowie Hill may be waiting for, it's tied up in the state's too busy to give out all the paperwork stuff. So they're still waiting to get their, all the DEP stuff they needed.
So that's what slowed them down.
So it's a good thing we gave a 6-month extension, they need it.
Yeah.
Okay,
So what,
anything else?
did any, I noticed here on the Hollowell gravel pit, where Stone X owns now, was
Stone X
What-
sold it, Jaden Landscape or something.
Stone
Zone
X.
Trucking LLC is the owner.
So, was that entrance appropriate for sightlines?
I do not know the answer to that question.
I'm pretty sure that Calvin.
We know that
looked at-
MDOT issued a
Oh,
permit,
yeah, I think they did, yeah, that's what we
and
know.
according to the planning board record, the planning board accepted that verified that site distances were accurate.
Yeah, I don't think anybody's come in and without, we've approved anybody in the 4 years without either Calvin's or
Right, or
state's
state.
blessing.
Right, no, I don't think we have either.
So I think that is.
But I keep harping on that issue when they come in. Don't just go by the DOT's permit. And this ordinance requires verification by the engineer of site distances.
Well, one of our concerns, when we think of the accident that happened there, and if you're pulling out of a gravel pit with a full load, you're coming out of there extremely slow.
Right.
And one of our concerns when we're talking about the campground was when people hauling in campers in there, they're gonna be able to pull out of there quick enough.
Right.
You know, hindsight's always 20/20, isn't it?
Yeah, and I don't know the solution to that either, I mean, I guess you just go by what the book says for safe distances and
Yeah.
all that stuff, which I think there's quite a line of sight there on that,
Well, there is,
at, the, stone with a gravel pit,
yeah, but if you're doing 55 miles an hour.
45.
Uh-huh.
Well, that's the problem, it's designed that you're actually going the speed limit.
Yeah.
It may be a little bit,
80th.
and I'm not saying that anybody, doesn't sound like anybody did anything wrong, but, you just get distracted for a second.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's all it takes.
there, but for the grace of God, go on. Anything else, guys? Okay, thank you for your time, and we will see you on August 6th, I think is our next meeting. So, good, Brian, hopefully you'll be a.
Motion to adjourn?
Yes, motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Bring your hand if you approve. I just assume there was no further discussion. Yeah, hopefully I'm sure they'll, if not next week, they'll be doing it the next week. And I will send the chair the note asking to make sure it makes the agenda. And George will mention it to the town manager. Great. And we're happy you're joining us,
Good.
even if you are a friend of Downs.
What? We were the first ones to welcome us and do it.
Were they really? What did they want?
Dad brought us some baked goods.
Oh, wow. They were the first ones, no, you weren't, oh, the second one,
We're expecting us. People started before us, but we're the first ones actually closed.
Hey, George, I'm gonna push the off button.